good. No, I have this one. Thank you, Kaya and Astrid, and thanks for having me here. And really feel honored to have been invited for fellowship for a few months here in Frankfurt. It's kind of very interesting place. It's warmer now, so I feel a little bit at home, but still far away from home. But I have done a lot of work and a lot of talks about this issue at different avenues, but I think that I want to show you only 10 minutes of your time or 12 minutes of your time to see the clips from the movie, Namibia, The Price of Genocide, that I did with Al Jazeera. As Kaya said, they just told me, sent me an email that it will be rebroadcast again in July in remembrance of because Namibia just commemorated the genocide for the first time on May 28th. So Al Jazeera will rebroadcast it again, and I was fortunate and lucky to be part of this project. So I will just let Leila go to the project.
The German government acknowledged responsibility for colonial genocide against Namibia's Herero and Nama people over 100 years ago. But activists who long campaigned for reparations say the compensation on offer doesn't truly reflect the appalling suffering of the thousands who died. We've been to find out why.
You see on the background over here, that's the Nami desert. The sand will come and bury everything. But for some reason, the sand, the Jews refuse to bury these people because their spirits are strong and they want the story to be told. We're in the Swakopmund cemetery. In my background is the people who died in the concentration camp.
In this desert and across Namibia, between 1904 and 1908, German colonial forces displaced and killed up to 80% of the Herero tribe, some 80,000 people. Other ethnic groups, like the Nama and the San, also suffered grievously at the hands of the colonists. 10,000 Nama died, half their population, as well as an unknown number of San. This was the first genocide of the 20th century, but by no means the last. In many ways, Imperial Germany's treatment of the indigenous people of Namibia foreshadowed the barbarity of the Nazi Holocaust against the Jews and other groups during World War II.
The concentration camps were really, that's where almost a lot of our people perished from malnutrition, and a lot of them were forced to work on the railway, and then basically worked them to death.
Herero activist Jephta U has spent most of his adult life fighting for international acknowledgement of the genocide and restitution for the descendants of the victims.
I journey struggle based on the stories that I recall my grandmother told me, and then when I started, as an adult, I started learning more and learning more, and ever since, I've never rested.
Finally, this year, the activism of people like Jephta appears to have paid off. In May, the German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas made a groundbreaking announcement.
Wir bezeichnen heute diese Ereignisse jetzt auch offiziell als das, was sie gewesen sind, ein Völkermord. Wir bekennen uns damit auch zu unserer historischen Verantwortung. Und im Lichte dieser historischen und auch moralischen Verantwortung Deutschlands werden wir Namibia und die Nachkommen der Opfer um Vergebung bitten.
A few months later, Namibia and Germany announced a draft agreement which, say both sides, will bring closure to this dark chapter of history. If it goes ahead, Germany will formally apologise to Namibia and pay 1.1 billion euros in compensation to cattle after the genocide now live for the most part in abject poverty. Jephta visits Venevé in Kari, who's one of many Herero struggling to survive. And it's not only Venevé's generation who are suffering. Barring some kind of intervention, her children are unlikely to escape the cycle of poverty, and making life even harder. The government has recently decreed that they must move to an even more remote location.
That's too much. It's too emotional for me. And what's going to happen? Them taking chance like far away and experience not living.
What about the Herero demand that they should get their land, or at least some of it, returned to them? But any discussion about the return of land must involve its current owners, mostly white Namibian farmers who possess vast tracts of it. Jephta visits Kurt Volding, a German Namibian who speaks fluent Herero. He owns a 15,000 hectare farm in the Waterberg, a region which used to be inhabited by the Herero until the Germans began their campaign of annihilation against them in 1904.
My great-great-grandfather came here in 1907, which was just after the German Herero War, and farming here and living in close relationship with the OvaHerero communities bordering to our fence, and it's very much farming related, but of course it brings together our different cultures as well.
But when it comes to addressing the past, Volding, like other white German Namibian farmers in the region, deny that this land used to belong to the Herero.
This land was 100 years before that, it was not inhabited by Herero-speaking people, to the knowledge I do have.
While touring the farm, Jephta raises the land issue.
I don't think just buying land and giving it back will improve the situation dramatically. I doubt that one. I think we have to develop the area, we have to develop the people, investing in a better tomorrow, like education and infrastructure, schools and hospitals, that people really feel that their life is improving.
Jephta also wants to know if they can reach a common understanding about the past.
Do you deny that there was a genocide, or you don't deny it? I mean,
I don't question the harm which was done to our Herero people. Yeah? They lost many of their land, they lost almost all their cattle, they lost half, let's say half of the population.
Yet, says Volding, he doesn't believe the mass murder of Herero was sanctioned by the government of the time.
If there would have been the initial thought of eradicating a certain tribe, but there was not an intention, and the relationship to the Holocaust is for me, is far-fetched.
But Jephta's next visit illustrates that for many Herero, historical links between the genocide and the Holocaust aren't far-fetched at all. He travels to Shark Island, which used to be a notorious concentration camp. Herero and Nama, who survived death in the desert, were brought here and used as slave labor.
This side is where our ancestors were kept, and the German set up this concentration camp, and they used to call, historians call it the death camp.
Well, that's the film. It's 26 minutes. When you get time, you should be able to watch it on your own time. And it explained my work and explained my orientation and explained where I come from. And today's lecture is The Struggles Continues, Transgenerational Memory of the OvaHerero People, Genocide. And I subtitled The Burden of Memories, a family journey through genocide, apartheid, and fight for justice. I deliberately chose to do that my first part, and there's a second part, because I want to bring a personal aspect to this struggle. I just saw many layers to it, because this is my struggle. And William Faulkner said, the past is never dead. It's not even past, because the past is always present, and that's the reality of my life. Of course, I'm Jephta, as I was introduced. I live in the United States for many years, and I have my kids over there, my family, and wife, and everybody in the United States. And at the same time, I have been going back to Namibia, and I go back simply to remain connected, and I go back simply because I want to continue the struggle of my people. Because I had the privilege of having gone to the universities, and I have the privilege of living in many other countries, and I have the privilege of witnessing the struggles even of United States citizens, blacks and Latinos fighting for justice. So I feel it is my duty, and I felt my duty to return or to continue returning and going back in order to fight the fight. As the Namibian continue to recover from the enduring legacy of apartheid, we are now beginning to confront more profound trauma, the unhealed wounds of German colonialism. My own political and historical consciousness developed or was shaped by many moments, especially the daily injustice I endured under apartheid, and the haunting family memories of 1904-1908 OvaHerero genocide. This memory has been passed down through generation. I'm the 5th generation. As a Herero and the 4th generation descendant of genocide survivors, I grew up under South African apartheid in Namibia, as did my parents. I went to high school, and I was subjected to a Bantu education system specifically designed for black students. In the words of the architect of apartheid, who later became the president of South Africa, Dr. Verwoerd, he made it clear that when he was referring to, referring to himself, when I have control of native education, I will reform it so that natives will be taught from childhood to realize that equality with Europeans is not for them. People who believe in equality are not desirable teachers for natives. When my department controls native education, it will determine that what class of higher education a native is suited for and whether he will ever have a chance to use his knowledge. So I grew up under that doctrine of apartheid. In February 1980, during my first, when I was in 11th grade, my life was abruptly changed, abruptly altered. One day after soccer practice, one of the white Afrikaner principal called me up and said like, hey Jephta, would you please come here? And I walked to him and he said like, as of today, I want you to be a day scholar, meaning that I was not going to be in the hostel with the rest of the students. I prodded him like, why? What happened? Why are you chasing me from the hostel? Because he said like, you are too dangerous to live with other students. In Afrikaans, hy is gevaarlijk vir samelewing. So, and this is the same principle we referred to us when he was giving us food, distributing the garment food. He would say, give those food to those hungry wolves. So, dehumanizing those of us who demanded fairness in the school system policy. So I was young at the time. Our school were militarized. Every teacher, mostly white teachers, was also a soldier, teaching with R1 rifles slung over their shoulders and pistol to their hips. The expulsion was one of my many moments that stoked my resistance and lifelong commitment to continue the struggle. And one of the childhood memories, I think I'm not going to use this slide. You can, that was my school, the other one, yeah, sorry. Forget about the slides. One of the childhood memories, vivid, of my grandfather, and you'll be surprised. I think, let me finish the story. Memory remains vivid. My grandfather once took us to sell a sheep to a German settler. The farmer offered prices less than the market value. My grandfather pleaded with him to reconsider because the money was needed for our school fees. Perhaps he brought us along to appeal to the white man's humanity. But it was humiliating. Most painful was when our grandfather called the settler children klein bas, little boss, a term black people were forced to use when addressing white children. When we asked him why he did that, he simply said, I just wanted to sell the sheep. This encounter scarred me deeply. Years later, after Namibian independence, I drove my late grandmother, Muyenda, and other family members to visit a doctor. As we were walking through the plains, you may have seen that in the film, my grandmother said, when we were young, we were not allowed to walk here alone. And I asked him why. He said, like, there was a German settler who used to prey on Herero women, especially the pregnant ones, and will chase them down, and after raping them, will cut their stomach open. We were so silent, and I asked, like, but this was after the war of 1904. She said, the Germans used to do anything to a Herero woman or Herero person. Only they stopped after the Afrikaner government took control of the country. So this is a stages of the memory. So I stood and I drove in silence for the entire journey, and I was thinking like, wow. Her words filled me with fury and helplessness. It was not simply a story of gendered violence, but also of violence perpetrated on a stolen land now owned by the descendants of those very colonizers. Then I'm going to tell you another story that stoked my resistance. My grandmother, younger sister, for many years, I spent many years interviewing scholars on the genocide. But one day I asked my grandmother, would you please put the camera in front of her, video camera. I said, like, would you please tell me about your family story? She recounted where they moved from, where they were chased from, where the family used to be. And I asked her point blank, did you get to see your grandmother? She said, no. I asked why? Because she died during the war of 1904. I asked how, tell me. She was hesitant. And she told me as they were walking or fleeing from the German troops, she was a little bit older and so too tired to walk further. And her brother told the kids, my grandmother, to go, my great-grandmother to go ahead while he was trying to help her sister. But on their way, they couldn't help her anymore, so they left her. So when the uncle joined the family, meaning my great-grandmother asked her uncle, like, where is my mom? We left her. So where? Under the tree. And she asked, you mean you left my mother under a tree? Yes. So my great aunt told me how grandmother was left under a tree to die. So there's no grave of my great-grandmother, and she was left, but she described the vicinity where that happened. So these are the journey, or these are the memories of this transnational memory, the memory under apartheid and German colonialism, and the landscape that we still pass through with its violent history of Namibia, especially knowing these farmlands and places still contains the names of Herero. The Germans never altered the names, they left the names as is. Even the German fella who just spoke lived around 30 kilometers from us, and his farm has a Herero name. And I have to say, I mentioned him because I realized later when I asked my cousin that that's where his grandfather or his father is the one my grandfather was begging when he was selling the sheep. And that is considered a good German guy. He's a nice guy. You can drink beer with him, but his views is just his views. And that's what we are dealing with. No, yes, this is what, yes, that's the landscape of my grandmother, where the space that he used. She described where they were never allowed to pass near that place. So whenever I go to my village, I go through that every single time, and that story is always present in my mind. And I tell my kids and my cousins. So I share this story to illustrate the enduring pain of colonialism, apartheid, and genocide. While I did not live through the 1904 genocide, its legacy lives in me through trauma passed down from generation to generation, embedded in our stories and the very soil of Namibia. The genocide impact is not emotional and cultural, it is material. The intergenerational poverty, the OvaHerero, is a direct result of the genocide and the systematic disposition of land and livestock. German settlers were granted land, cattle, and state support to establish themselves as successful farmers. Meanwhile, Herero farmers in communal areas are only relying on white farmers to buy their livestock, as well as to feed their livestock, just as my grandfather once did. Worse still, my many pastures overpriced grass to feed their cattle. Grass harvested from land violently stolen from our ancestors. 32 years after independence, this structural land inequity remains unresolved. Today, I will take you on a journey through our ongoing reparatory justice. So these are the effects of the genocide, and why do we fight? What happened? Who was responsible? Of course, over a century ago, those of you who don't know the history, Germany colonized Namibia. And the very first people they came in contact with were the OvaHerero and Namas. But the OvaHerero were first because they live in the central area. So there was a skirmishes, resistance, and conflict, and eventually a war broke out between the two groups, Germans and OvaHerero. Of course, the OvaHereros had some few limited guns, but they were outnumbered. They fought many battles until they were finally defeated at Waterberg, the landscape that you saw. That's where the final battle was. So when the Hereros were defeated, they ran to the east. But the general von Trotter, who was commanding the war, was not happy with retreat because he wanted the total military defeat of OvaHerero. He felt by them retreating, they betrayed him. So he pursued them into Omaheke Desert. He pursued them, women and children. In the end, he issued a proclamation order, what you call Vernichtungsbefehl, that all Hereros, women and children, will be shot and should be killed. And that's exactly what happened. The desert, there was no water, killed most of the people that died of thirst, and those remaining later, after 2 years, I think, December, they were rounded up and taken into concentration camps. And those concentration camps is what you saw in Shark Island, as well as in Swakopmund. Not only Hereros encountered the fate of Fonchoda, but also the Nama people who also resisted, and the same order of extermination order was extended to them as well. So by the end of the war, 1904, 1908, 80% of the Herero has died, most of them in concentration camps and in the desert, and 50%, what they said, of the Nama people have been totally disseminated. So some historians claim that, of course, Germany used Namibia, this genocide, as a training ground for future Holocaust, as the narrator pointed out. And what did the German gain? Land. The land was soaked in the blood of our ancestors, is still to this day occupied by the descendants of the German settlers and Afrikaners under apartheid. The very soil that should have nourished our people is now forever a farmland of white people. I mentioned the number of people because I talked to them. I mean, they also experienced similar fate. Their land was taken, their cattle was taken, all their properties. After genocide, they restricted the OvaHerero and Nama people from ever owning properties for another 4 years. So we feel that Germany, the history is often hidden or unknown. Many people, including Black South Africa, even Africans, they don't know about this genocide. And they don't even know that Namibia was under apartheid. So our history mostly has been written by the German scholars who had access to the information because it is written in Germany. And in our own people also, they have this knowledge of the history and the knowledge of what happened to their family because we are oral tradition. So the story has been passed on from generation to generation. So as you said, Germany apologized in 2021, of course, but that apology was hollow. They said they're going to follow it up, but we never followed it up. They have never apologized publicly to the community, but they have apologized publicly to the international community. So yet, when I do research, there is no acknowledgement within the Bundestag, German parliament. So the Bundestag between 2016 and 2022 has recognized several other genocides, such as the killing of Sindhi and Roma under the National Socialism, which happened in the 1930s, has recognized the mass killing of Armenians in the Ottoman Empire, 1914, 1915, which is after the Herero-descent, the Holocaust, the Holodomor, and of course the Holocaust. All these genocides, they recognize occurred after 1944, when Raphael Lemkin coined the word genocide. So this is why we ask ourselves, why then is the genocide against the OvaHerero and Nama people not similarly recognized? We believe Germany has a selective applications of moral standard, distinguish between worthy victims and unworthy victims who deserve moral remorse. And we, the OvaHerero and Nama people, are unworthy victims because we are Africans. The whole project for colonialism and apartheid was a crime against humanity, let alone the genocide committed to Namibia. So on a personal level, as I indicated, I'm very well aware what happened to my people. The question is, where are we now? Despite resilience and pressure, including lawsuit, the OvaHerero filed in the US, we filed like 3 lawsuits to pressure German and against the German firms, companies that were participating in the transport of the soldier to German Southwest Africa. We lost all these lawsuits. But we managed also to get the German civil society to engage in our struggle, especially Berlin post-colonial and Hamburg post-colonial. And we did a lot of demonstration within Germany. And finally, Germany was getting a lot of pressure from the citizens that they have to do something about Namibia. And so this is where the result of this German government apologizing or even responding. But then the German government immediately said that we would like to engage, but we are not going to engage with the tribes that were affected. We are only going to engage with the Namibian government. If you see the political landscape in Namibia, the party that is ruling now is mostly from the northern region. So they are not affected, they were not affected by the genocide. So as a result, the German captured that moment and said that we want to negotiate with you. Of course, they negotiated, and in 2021, they reached an agreement, what they call the joint declaration, and between the Namibian government and German government. And the offer basically is that Germany will give 1.1 billion euros over 30 years, meaning that Germany will give Namibia $50 million divided into 7 regions, which if you divide it in 7 regions, each region will get 7 million towards development projects. They are not going to give to the community that were affected by the genocide. Of course, we rejected this on the basis that our struggle is not about bilateral assistance, our struggle is not about handouts, but our demands are clear. We want Germany to pay reparations. We want Germany to account for the genocide. We want Germany to apologize. And some of the central demands of our struggle is Germany to pay reparations, must pay reparations for forced labor used to build railroads, ports, and infrastructure to concentration camps like Shark Island and Swakopmund and other places. And compensation must be provided for stolen land and cattle and other properties. And we want Germany to issue a formal and unambiguous apology to the descendants of genocide victims and the Namibian people. And currently, Germany apologized to Namibians through their OvaHerero, but they explicitly made it clear that we are going to apologize, we are going to issue the apology based on historical terms, meaning that at the time when the German committed genocide, the term genocide was not coined. So therefore, this apology will go through part of history, but not in legal terms. Because they were afraid, they are still afraid that if they use the legal terms, then they will be liable for that. And they even made it clear that if we do apologize, then other groups like Italians and Greeks will come and sue us for damage or for the crime we did in World War II. They said it's so clear. We also want Germany to repatriate stolen human remains and cultural artifacts taken without the consent from our people. A lot of our people at the time, especially during the Shark Island, there was a medical experiment conducted on them. And one of the scenes that probably is not there is, especially in Shark Island, they will randomly cut the man's head and instruct the women to boil the head of the man, the person they cut, and then they scrape them clean to transport to Berlin, because at the time there were these scientific experiments conducted on black people all over the world. And so we have a lot of human remains in Germany, and we found some human remains as well in New York, because there was some trading between these collectors, as they call them. And even recently when I was here, they found some human remains of our Herero people in Strasbourg. And so this is an ongoing struggle that Germany must account and return them so that we can bury them, because these people were completely violated. So we also want economic rehabilitation. Well, the policy of Namibian government is basically that of reconciliation, meaning that we have to forget what happened during colonialism. But we, the descendants of our Herero people, refuse to that. We demand that Germany must pay reparation in order for us to rehabilitate ourselves economically. Our community is still reeling. After the genocide, it was apartheid. So the OvaHerero and Nama people never had a chance to mourn and to bring closure to what happened to their people. And how can we have a chance to bring, how can we have a chance to close a chapter given that the land that belonged to us are still in the hands of the white people? And now we are confined in this area where nothing grows, or 100 people live in one area, and there is no way for us to sustain ourselves to engage in the meaningful economic activities. So that's part of our demand, is that the reparation, we can reconstruct our own society. Part of our demand is to tell Germany that they should not dictate that we are going to give you reparation, but only towards building clinics or bridges, because that is the role of our government, and the government is in a position and they can afford to do that. It is just, we want Germany to engage with us. So the talk that they had with the German government, they did it exclusively with the Namibian representatives without the OvaHerero and Nama leadership. So we were not consulted, we are not involved in this conversation. So we say, no, we have to be involved, and we have to set the terms. So Germany is the perpetrator and setting the term, dictating the terms of what the reparations. So we believe our demands are just. They aim to end intergenerational poverty and heal invisible wound. They stem from our commitments to preserving our history, validating both oral tradition and historical memory. We must rewrite school curricula to reflect what existed before colonialism and what was violently erased. To be clear with you, in Namibia, the history books, when you talk about this genocide, is just a page when you go through high school and secondary school. Most of the people who knows about the young kids, they either hear from their parents or read a section about it. So the memory has been erased, and I believe that the German government and the Namibian government is in cahoots to erase or to make this history unknown to our people. And so we demand that reparation money, we want to rewrite our own history. So Namibia is 32 years old, and we have demanded from the Namibian government that there should be a commemoration day in Namibia on public calendar to acknowledge the genocide. They just agreed last month, May 28th, was declared a national. So after many years of struggle. At the same time, the places like Shak Island and other many places, they remain open to tourism, meaning that they are not a national heritage site. Anyone can go and pitch up a tent and sleep there. And surprisingly, if you go to Shak Island, you can unearth the bones of those who were interned there. They are there. There was a scientific community from Germany and England that went to these places and identified and even excavated the bones of the people who were interned in these places. So this is a continuation of us being re-traumatized all the time. A call for restorative justice. We call for justice that sees our wounds are still open, our memory is still alive. A justice that acknowledges that the soil of Namibia is still soaked with the tears and blood of our ancestors. We call for justice that honors their dignity and empowers their descendants to walk this earth with pride, knowing that their history is acknowledged, their suffering validated, and their future brighter. Therefore, we say nothing about us without us. Even if the Namibian government and Germany continue to negotiate, as long as we are not involved, and not dictating, and our demands are not at the table, this chapter will never be closed. I tend to end my talk with a poem. Many years ago when I used to visit Germany, and still some people will say, like, you know, this story is so old, it's history. Let it go. And I said, no, it is not history. It is my story. And the poem is titled, No Shame. No shame. My story is not old. It is being told. The arrogance of victors to set the timeline. The arrogance of the killers to set guidelines. My story is not history. It is about the burden of memory. It is about speaking up. I can't keep my mouth shut. My story is about my identity. It is about my misery. It is about disposition. It is about liberation. My story is righteous. It is timeless. It is extraordinary. It is revolutionary. My story is not old. It is being told now. It is timeless. I can't remain silent. Thank you.